beer, it's good for you.
Hello and welcome to the video. In this video I'll be sharing my tried and tested recipe for this style along with hints and tips. However, as this is a misunderstood style, I will start with some details so that everyone is on the right track. So that we are clear on what a cold IPA is, here is a quick explanation. The mission statement of this beer style is to produce a more crisp version of an American IPA. This involves the use of lager yeast and Pilsner malt as part of its recipe, which is why some may compare it to an India Pale Lager or IPL for short. However, as this is an actual American IPA, you will see a high level of alcohol, and the core feature of an American IPA, which naturally involves lots of modern American hops, rather than the older traditional European hops that you will find in many India Pale Lager styles. You will also note that this style is bitter like an American IPA, rather than a lager. So yes, this is a hybrid IPA style, rather than a sister style to the IPL, even though it is an IPA that shares some lager characteristics. So let's get started. Here is a quick preview of this recipe's vital statistics. This recipe offers approximately 7% AVB, a lower level of colour compared to regular IPA beers at a mere 7.1 EBC, and a 1.2 BU-GU ratio, indicating that it is on the bitter side. However, you will find that this is very nicely balanced taste-wise despite this, and this is one quirk of this style. This recipe, like all of my shared recipes, is written by me and can be found in full within the video's description, which is underneath the video window when viewed on a desktop computer, above the comments section. You will also find a link to the recipe in full on Brewfather, which can be used free of charge with some restrictions. For the very best results, and so that you are actually brewing the recipe as intended, I strongly suggest that your initial steps will be to convert the recipe before ordering in your ingredients. I have an easy guide to doing this on Brewfather on my channel, as shown on screen now. Within this video, this recipe is being brewed using a BrewZilla 35 litre to the volume of 20 litres, or approximately 5.28 US liquid gallons. But as part of this conversion process, this can be scaled and shaped to suit your own brewing system and volume requirements. Water preparation is also an important area, and I suggest that you plan your water profile ahead. Tweaking your water profile for this recipe will enable the hops to shine, which is vital for any IPA recipe. Personally, I use the hoppy profile from Brewfather as shown on screen throughout this recipe's development and testing, and would recommend it unless you have your own hoppy profile that your taste buds prefer. Before we start the brew, let's turn our attention to the grain bills milling first, which in this case is Pilsner malt and flaked maize. Here you can see me milling the Pilsner malt but not the flaked maize. There is simply no need or reason to mill the flaked maize, and milling such an adjunct will cause certain mills issues, so I suggest avoiding it. Let's now start the brew and look at the recipe, and I will explain further. I started doing in with just the Pilsner malt and then added the flaked maize last to avoid recirculation issues. I will also mention that you are way better off obtaining a pre-gelatinized flaked maize from a homebrew store. The pre-gelatinized flakes will give a higher yield and a much more trouble-free brew than a conventional flaked corn. As you can see, this is a pretty simple grain bill with 80% Pilsner malt and 20% flaked maize. With this style you can actually go up to 40% corn or rice if you like, but in my taste test the 80-20 split gained the most approval. The Pilsner malt here is certainly allowing for crispness and plenty of fermentables. As your base malt, it is essentially a canvas of flavour, whereas the flaked maize historically has been used as an adjunct to aid in beer stability and clarity. The contribution it plays in this recipe though is more for its smoothness, which adds to drinkability. So essentially we have a grain bill here that promotes crispness, smoothness and drinkability. It's a good start. After the mash I moved on to the sparge. I did not use the top plate for this brew as you can see, but I was careful to ensure that the sparge was nice and even through the green bed. Let us now look at the boil schedule. Here we have a 30-minute boil in total that is in keeping with the modern boil time. If this is new for you and you would like further details, then check out another of my videos as shown on screen. For now though, I'm happy to tell you that the 30-minute boil has no disadvantages, just advantages to both taste and time. On the hot side of this recipe we have hops being added at 2 points of the boil schedule. The first is 52 IBUs worth of Warrior at the start of the boil. This addition is providing most of our bittering, and Warrior achieves this in a clean and smooth style. When you boil for longer periods you will often lose its aromatic qualities, which are mostly citrus with a little spice, but these should be very noticeable to most taste palates with a 30-minute boil. Following this we have flame out additions of Centennial, Chinook and Citra, which I added via my hop missile. Using a hop back is a great way of making these flame out hops really shine. This is a great hop combination for this IPA style and provides robust flavours of citrus, pineapple, grapefruit, lime and tropical fruit in general, along with aromatic pine and floral notes. The theme for a cold IPA is very much on the citrus and tropical side, and I did test various other hop selections on my journey in this recipe's development, but this combination was a winning favourite for myself and others involved. Moving on to transfer and yeast pitch now, and a popular route for this style is to use Fermentis 3470 hot at 18 degrees Celsius or 65 degrees Fahrenheit. In my trials I felt that this gave a good overall result, but in my taste test Lutra at 30 degrees Celsius gave a more pleasing result that was still in keeping with the style. I also had good results at 20 degrees Celsius too with Lutra, but at 30 degrees Celsius a sweet spot was found. Naturally this is all opinion based on taste buds, so do feel free to make your own choice based on your own taste buds. Both yeast choices are recommended. I avoided using pressure during my trials as this was not the direction suggested by the style, which is based on a hot lager yeast ferment. The dry hop for this recipe comprises of 50 grams or 1.76 ounces each of Centennial, Citra and Chinook. This can be added to your fermenter in the usual way close to the end of fermentation. I would suggest when you are 5 to 10 gravity points away from your estimated final gravity. However, this is also a great one to try with keg hopping, which I did with my latest brew of this recipe. This is certainly a popular method for homebrewers in the US, and since this is an American beer style it seems very fitting. I would suggest obtaining a keg hop container like the one shown on screen to do this easily, and you will find that many are supplied with chains for easy removal. However, this is not a smart choice if you think the beer will only last you a couple of weekends, as the dry hops will take longer to impart flavour and aroma due to the lower temperature used for keg serving, but at the same time you will be able to replace all oxygen with CO2 in the keg, and your hop container will remain for months without any real concerns about hop burn or off flavours due to that lower temperature. The vital things here are to burp your keg several times, with CO2 removing all oxygen and ensuring that everything is clean and sanitary. Let's now take a look at the final beer, starting with a close-up of the pour. This beer was cold crashed for a total of 3 days, which dropped it pretty clear despite having hops in the keg. I only did this because it's part of the style that this is clear. Make your own decisions here. This beer has been in the keg for 10 days at this point, and an average temperature of 5 degrees Celsius, which is the equivalent of 41 degrees Fahrenheit. This has been under 12 psi of pressure, which is 0.83 bar for this time, and I'm also using this pressure for serving too. Let's now move on to my tasting notes. Aroma. The aroma here is very citrus and tropical, along with aromatic pine and floral notes. There is a hint of malt, but it is very easy to miss. Flavour. On entry we have robust flavours of citrus, pineapple, grapefruit, lime and tropical fruit with some background pine. The finish is dry with a good level of bitterness, but nothing harsh. This is all wrapped into a clean medium-low body, which makes this one especially easy drinking, despite its strong hop flavours and bitterness. Here are my notes. I feel that this recipe offers a nice flavourful, easy drinking example of the cold IPA style that offers a higher than usual bitterness due to the trend now of a low level of bitterness in IPA styles in general. And here is my final impression. Very flavourful and refreshing with big citrus and tropical hop flavours and a complementing dry bitter finish. Ideal as a summer thirst quencher on its own or with a barbecue. I will also mention that this was quite a project to get right, so if you are brewing this then I suggest that you brew it as is rather than tweaking it. Hard for some I know, but this final recipe will be worth it. I do hope that you found this video useful, informative and interesting. If so, why not consider liking and subscribing? For further support you can join the channel's Facebook group, and if you would like to support the channel then check out the channel's merchandise store, as all profits go back into the channel. Until next time, happy brewing!